Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader. Today a bit late because my mom is visiting. It's been an intense end of a month in October, but finally I am doing my wrap up for the books I have read. Now you might have seen that I've put a secret TBR challenge I've done in October up already, the wrap up for that challenge, in which I was reading some of the most disturbing books you have ever read, and you but you left a comment when I did my old video on the same topic. So you left comments with your own recommendations for most disturbing reads, and I decided to pick them up in October and read them. So I ended up reading 6 of them and I wrapped them up in that challenge. So I'm not gonna go through synopsis or what I thought about them, but because I am putting these wrap up as always in order from least enjoyable to the most enjoyable read of a month, I'll mention them. But if you're curious to know about them, what they are and what I thought about them, then you can check out that video that is gonna also be linked down below. But I've read a lot, and without further ado, I'll start from number 12. So number 12, we start off with a book from that challenge. And I actually got inspired at the end of this book to nominate my end of the year worst reads as books that are a crime against society, and these will have to definitely be there. So Firefly, something that I've read for, reading your most disturbing books ever written, and it's a number 12, and boy is this book shit. And I'm planning to do a whole Goodreads rant review because this just deserves it. This is definitely a crime against humanity, the fact that this even exists. And at number 11 we also have a book that I would personally categorize as a crime against humanity, and again in that video explain why, and it's Exquisite Corpse. Both of them are considered horror. Both of them have a lot of erotica elements in that. Not for me. At number 10 I will put The Wasp Factory, also book featured in that video. Now we are moving from just crime against humanity to just bad books in my opinion, but yeah, I still really didn't like this at all. At number 9 we are leaving behind for a while the books from that challenge to discuss a book that came actually in the adult book box for Fairy Loot for the month of September. This is Spells for Forgetting with a stunning edition. I've done a whole unboxing, I believe, for these, and as always I'm not gonna give synopsis of books I talked about in my TBR, considering that I ramble a lot. So this, I guess it's like the title. It's kind of forgettable, this book, unfortunately. I didn't mind the prose. I think the atmosphere was good, like it was definitely very creepy town, but the build-up was so slow that ultimately I found myself quite bored throughout these. It was quite uneventful, and I didn't mind the end. I think the end was the best part, for sure, when we finally find out what's going on. It's just that I think she should have put more interesting facts or discoveries throughout, or maybe the pace was wrong. I don't know, something didn't work. It ended up just being a 3 stars book. I am not writing this author off, but I think I don't know if this is not my genre, but I'd like to think that I like small town mysteries. I just like them to be a bit more intense, for them to keep me more on the edge of my seat, if it makes sense. But ultimately the reveal and everything was quite good, but I couldn't totally redeem all the rest. At number 8 we have an audiobook that I listen on script, and this is the Menendez murders. These are very famous murders that happened in the 90s, I believe, or 80s in USA, and I didn't know anything about them, and then I randomly came across this on script and decided to give it a try. So apparently this is a book based on the trial that these 2 brothers went through for murdering their parents. You know pretty much from the start that they did it, so they confessed to the murders. However, they tried to basically say that we killed our parents because they were abusive to us since we were children, and they were planning to kill us, so we decided to kill them first. And then you see the trial, see the outcome, and I think this author spent many years actually with the family, with the accused, and just following along all the trial. And this is a lengthy audiobook. I think it was more than 12 hours, between 10 and 12 hours, so it goes in a lot of details. And overall I enjoyed this. I think I learned a lot about the case. I do believe that the writing wasn't necessarily my kind of writing when it comes down to true crime, but this could be personal preference. I also think that the author focuses a lot on the defense, and we don't see much of the prosecution. So we know the outcome, of course, but we don't see how this outcome could have been possible, because ultimately the prosecution must have had a very strong case, and I think we see less on that side. So that was definitely missing. I personally believe that a miscarriage of justice has been done in this case, not because definitely they murdered the parents, but I also thought there were some mitigating factors that were kind of proven. Like, probably it was all circumstantial evidence, so unfortunately, you know, there wasn't strong evidence that they were abused as children, but all the testimonies, even the, you know, the way the brothers were, their personalities and what they did, it's a clear indication that his parents were very abusive. So I didn't feel very much bad about the victims, but at the same time, we are not in the Far West anymore, where you can just take upon yourself to, you know, revenge wrongdoings. Like, you know, they could have gone to the police, or family members should have gone to the police. And if the system was a better system, these children should have been taken out, and these children should have been supported, and the parents should have received punishment, but not just being brutally killed as they were. So it's a very divisive case, because again, I think they definitely killed them, but they had some reasons why they were doing that, although I didn't buy much the self-defense side of it. So I gave it 3.75 stars because I think it's a very lengthy and very detailed recollection of what happened, how it happened, blah blah blah. But definitely a couple of points missing, prosecution side, and I don't know, the writing wasn't my favorite thing. But if you know about these murders and you want to know more, or you're just into true crime, this is definitely something that you might want to check out. So at number 7, we'll go back to my secret TBR. So we will have The Butcher Boy, and at number 6 we have Off Season. Again, all of these are in the other video. But at number 5 we have Violet Made of Thorns. This was a catch-up from August. I think it was the August Fairlit YA book, and I really enjoyed this overall. I thought the writing was good, I think the characters were good, and the relationship in this was very good. It was hate to something that I wouldn't necessarily call like love, the love that we are used to in books and YA especially. It's a very hate relationship. It feels like they really loathe each other for whatever reason. So I really appreciated that. I think the weakest part of this was definitely the plot and the pace of the plot. But overall, it was a good experience. I really enjoyed Violet as a main character. I think she was someone who really comes out of the page as being strong. She's an unlikable character if you want, but she's a very good depiction of selfishness that can come from surviving trauma in your childhood and having to survive on your own. So when you're so used to rely only to yourself, then you have to be selfish. You have to learn how to survive, as I said. And so she's a very well portrayed there. And even now that she's a grown-up, she has more stuff. She remains a bit selfish, but you can understand why she does the thing that she does. So she's a very likable, unlikable character. In my opinion, I don't know, I clicked with her. And it's a bit mad what happens in these. I think I'll definitely check out the sequel. And I ended up giving these 3.75 stars, so was overall, considering that YA tend to be a miss a lot of the times for me, this was definitely a win. I've, as always, messed up with the numbers, didn't I? So just up here you'll find the right number. But I've listened to next to Stolen Tongues, and this is a horror. I've found this on Scribd, and I've been wanting to listen to this for a while. This is the story basically of this couple. They go to a cabin of her family that they own for many years, and when they're there, though, she starts having very weird dreams, and all of a sudden a sort of weird man starts coming around, and they start hearing voices, and all of a sudden, you know, the girlfriend starts speaking back in her dreams with these people outside their cabin. It's not too complex as a plot, but to explain without spoiling anything, it's a bit complex. But it's a horror about a haunted cabin and a creature. And I really found this spooky. I think the audiobook for this was perfect. Awesome experience. It honestly got me spooked. And I don't know if I would have been that terrifying if I was to read this, but I heard people being utterly terrified while reading this. And I think the first half is very spooky, it's very creepy, it makes you uncomfortable. The second half wasn't that strong. I think the thing I didn't love about this was the ultimate reveal, what was going on, but the creature in it and the spookiness, perfect. Like it did what horror should do. And I will check more by the author. It was definitely the introduction to this new horror creature that I've never seen before, and so that was very fascinating. And it's definitely, the writing was very good. But the audio, I would recommend the audio so much. And I gave this 4 stars. Number 4, we have My Story. Now, this is a collection of 3 stories by the author. It's an autobiographical book, so it's a non-fiction. Now, A Child Called It, the first book, is something that I discussed in the Secret TBR because it was part of that. But when I bought this, it came like in this format, so I ended up reading the other 2 books as well. So I have A Lost Boy and A Man Named Dave. And I think this is a very difficult book, as I said in the other video, to review, if it makes sense, because this again is a non-fiction, and it's the story of this boy who has survived horrible abuse at his mother's hands. To this point in 1992 was the 3rd most disturbing case of abuse in the history of California. And A Child Called It, I can't even put into words. You'll have to see my other video, but I can't promise that in the other video I'm more I'm more able to explain why I found this absolutely heart-wrenching. It does get better in the sense that in The Lost Boy and A Man Named Dave, there is, there are some recollection of some scenes of abuse, but it's not that heavy in terms of what this boy has gone through, because by the time The Lost Boy starts, he has been now put in foster care. And I think this does a good job of showing you what abuse and what a troubled child might get himself into trouble and how he might struggle through life. It goes through everything that usually they teach you in school, basically, or in psychology studies and everything. People that have traumatic childhood, they might then become a bit delinquent during their teenagehood, they might struggle with this and that, they might struggle with the relationships and so on. And so you see all of these playing out in these. So yeah, in that sense, it teaches you a lot. It's also a remarkable story of how this man managed to become who he becomes despite everything. So it was definitely a remarkable and inspiring story. I will refuse to give this a rating because I would not feel well with myself to rate something like this on a just literature point of view. So just me as a reader, not judging the content but how the way it's presented, I do have a few critiques. And the writing is not spectacular, be really honest, but clearly he's not someone who studied to become an author or anything of the sort. So the prose was not bad necessarily. I didn't mind this prose at all, but it was definitely not amazing writing. I have also to say that I don't understand why he puts in each of the 3 books at the end you've gone afterwards by people in his life. And although I do understand why there is his son afterwards, and I really like that one, all the other people I just didn't see the point of that. And also want to mention that I think at the same time, this is just his story, and this is why I'm no one who can judge him for his choices. He made his own choices, he knows best. I just struggle sometimes in seeing some of his choices. I struggle sometimes in seeing how people kept overall abusing him, even if it was just verbally. Really struggled to just stood up for himself, and how he kept going back to this woman over and over again. So it was just, for me, very frustrating to see. At the same time, I don't want to judge him because he lived his life, he made his choices, remarkable human being, so I do understand why he did it. It just was really frustrating at the same time, just as a human being, to other human beings, seeing him going through so much, even when he left the house, even when he left the actual physical abuse. This is also a very important book when it comes down to highlight how much the system fails children how things have improved now, but we are far, far from being even near where we should be in terms of foster care and how social services work. This is based on USA, but I've worked alongside social services in UK, and it's rough and it's not nice. And I wished in 30 years we had made more progresses. But at number 3 we have Patra and Frankie. This is just an audiobook that I found on Scribd. I heard amazing things about this, so I wanted to try this. A literature fiction, and it's a story of this young woman who moves to New York after having like a troubled life, and she goes there and she's an artist, and she meets these 20 years older men. They just click. One day they meet, they click immediately, they decide to get married, and then you follow their relationship for around a year and a half, not long at all, and how their relationship starts very strong and then it just goes downhill, and what happens to them. This was a rough ride, and it's definitely a genre that's not my cup of tea in general, but now and then I can just appreciate a lot what this genre does, and I think this was a perfect example of that. From the writing to the characterization and this mad journey that we go on, it just felt very real to life and felt very raw. It just hit me in the chest a couple of times, like I was very invested in these, and that's why ultimately I gave it 5 stars, because if I stop and think, okay, this is a literature fiction that is depicting a problematic relationship and people that feel very real, they're going through a lot of things in their life and trying to stay together, and then realize that, you know, they might have made wrong choices in their life. It just feels very human, and I just couldn't find flaws. The writing is stellar. And I also really liked how this portrayed the role that shame has in exacerbating mental health, and about, you know, how that plays a role in self-harming, in suicide attempts and so forth. And I think it's such a poignant and raw and touching story that I would suggest this. I think if you're into literature fiction, this is famous for a reason, as I'd like to say sometimes. And yeah, I'm just very glad that I read these. Will I ever reread it? Probably not. But for what it was, it's a 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. At number 2, we have another audiobook that I've listened to, and this is How I Helped O.J. Simpson Get Away with Murder. Now, the O.J. Simpson case is a case that I became obsessed with when I was doing my master's a year and a half ago, and I haven't binge watched, read everything I could get my hands on, and I didn't know about the existence of this book, and then it was just on Scribd, and I was just like, what is this? And this is very divisive, because this is a book written by his ex-manager, so someone who throughout the trial and for many years after actually defended him. And it was just, I understand why people would criticize this, because basically they had a breakdown of their relationship, and now, you know, he decided to put out this book. You know, if your conscience came and knocked a bit earlier, then O.J. Simpson would not have been, you know, in the streets and would have not gotten away with murder. So there is definitely that side of things that make you see the author as, you know, it's hard to sympathize with an author that has done the things that has done. But for someone who's so obsessed with the case as I have been basically in the last 2 years of my life, this is gold. These answers so many of the questions I had, like the glove thing, like how could have got the glove not to fit, the confession near the tree that it's in these. It just, you know, it takes you away all the doubts you had. It explains how things went, why they went that way. It gives you motives, it gives you how, when, and how then after I got away with it. And it's just eye-opening. Like, it was gold, it was gold. I just had so many moments where I was honestly, like, I was listening to this and I was stopping and thinking, this is what happened. I was just, you know, eureka moment after eureka moment. I was just having the best time listening to these. I don't know in terms of redemption for these men that helps so much someone who was clearly guilty, and I wanna praise him in a sense of deciding to put this out, but at the same time I don't know if this is enough to redeem himself, and especially for him how he kept having a relationship with the children of OJ. despite knowing everything he knew. And that's something that I struggle more to digest. I struggle more to forgive. And if I were in the children of OJ and I knew that he knew and he still pretend like nothing happened, yeah. OJ is this perfect example of psychopath. I think he went on then abuse other women in his life later on. It's just, I wish he could have another trial, and I wish he could, I mean, I know about the other trial and he was accused and spent time in prison, but still not for the abuse of women, not for having killed 2 people. And I think that's very, very frustrating. But if you're a fan of the OJ case and you've not checked this out, you have to, this is what you were looking for. And the number 1, we have actually another true crime. And this is another script find. I decided that in October, between, you know, reading disturbing reads, I wanted to read a lot of true crime because I'd missed that genre so much. And so I've been listened to them for 3 of them basically in a row. And on number 1, definitely I have to put Perversion of Justice. Now, I'll come out and admit I didn't know anything about Epstein until now. And you are wondering, Eva, do you live under a rock? And I'll answer, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how someone so obsessed with true crime as I am didn't know about this, but it's the truth. I didn't know about this. And it's just the remarkable journey that this journalist goes on to give a voice to the victim of Epstein and to collect and put together a case that was basically dismissed, and to a point that, you know, Epstein actually got what was coming to him. He got brought to justice, and it's just crazy for me. And I think, you know, a lot of the times you hear about bad journalism, or, you know, the side of how journalists ruin lives, and, you know, all the bad side of journalism, and then you forget about certain kinds of journalists, like investigative journalists, that actually without them we would never had justice, we would never know the truth. And this woman is a perfect example of, you know, why journalism is so important. What is, I think, what it should be the aim, the true goal of a journalist is revealing the truth. And I just loved it. I loved everything about this audio. It's very lengthy, it gives you a lot of details, but it also spends a lot of time finding and giving voice to the victims, which I really appreciated. She just felt this kind of, you know, superhero to me, this woman that did this. And I think sometimes she can come across as, I did that and this is thanks to me. And I do like that kind of owning what you deserve. And, you know, some people might think, oh, she's arrogant. I just thought she put a lot of effort. She sacrificed so much of her life, so many years of her life to do this, that she is owned now to be able to say, I did this, I said this first, or whatever. And I think she wasn't being arrogant, she was just being truth. And people always go, you know, you have to be humble, which yes, of course, but at the same time you should own your own victories, you should own your own achievement and say that without worrying about being too humble. If you've done something and you put effort in it, just be proud of it, just be able to say it out loud. And I really like the aspect of her just, you know, sometimes just saying, this is thanks to me, I did this. And I really, really enjoyed this, because at the same time she was giving all the credit, she wasn't dismissing the victims at all. She just did, I think, an amazing job about this. And it's just crazy to learn how much you can get away with when you have money. But it was also a story that teaches you that maybe justice doesn't come immediately, maybe it will take a long time, but ultimately justice will prevail, at least to a certain extent. And so I like to think about this as, you know, the outcome as being very positive from this book. She managed, you know, to make such a big case that the case was reopened, and he ended up going in prison because of that. So absolutely remarkable, 5 stars. And if you're into investigative journalism, or if you are more about the fence about journalism, and, you know, you just want to learn more about the Epstein case, whatever is the case, this is a very, very good true crime book. So yeah, thank you for watching, guys. Let me know, what did you read in October? What was your favorite read? And any recommendations from me? Let's chat in the comments down below. If you're new, I would love for you to subscribe, so you can hit the button down below. And I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself. Ciao!